How we doing, Atlas family? This week we're going to be releasing our student schedules for the upcoming school year, and these schedules will be based on the COVID return modified master schedule that we'll have. And the schedule on paper and on the portal might look a little different than what parents and students are used to seeing. And because of that, I wanted to put together a video just to kind of walk you through how to read the schedule and how the process will work in terms of our all virtual kids, our hybrid kids, and our in-person kids in terms of their instruction and what Friday looks like and things like that. Now, in a perfect world, this schedule would have been done a few weeks ago. But given the current climate and the difficulty in making a master schedule this complex, that wasn't possible. We basically have to have 3 different master schedules going on at the same time. We have an in-person master schedule, we have a hybrid schedule, and we have an all-virtual schedule. And student information systems are just not designed to be able to handle 3 different master schedules simultaneously. So I had to do some tricking of the system so that I could at least try to make the student schedules look as pretty as I could in terms of being able to understand it. But they are still going to look a little different than what they normally would, which is why I want to put this video together. The other thing that made finalizing the schedule difficult is we still had parents changing their minds between in-person versus virtual. And so whenever that happens, that then changes cohorts. It then changes the number of students in a section. And there are very tight thresholds here with these sections in terms of being able to keep the numbers down so that we can social distance and things like that. So even the change of a couple kids really can have a big impact on master scheduling when you're dealing with 3 different master schedules operating simultaneously. So at this point, I want to go through, we'll start with 5th grade, and I'll walk through the schedule, and I'll also show you some student examples so that you know how to read it. So in 5th grade is actually pretty simple. For the in-person kids, they arrive at school at 8:30, they're here till 12:30, and within that 4-hour window, they're going to get their instruction on math, language arts, science, and then or social studies, depending on which day of the week it is. Science and social studies typically are going to alternate days, even at the 5th grade level. When you look at the schedule, you're going to see the virtual classes or the special classes on there. But it will say virtual next to that. And that's just a reminder that the students aren't actually going to attend those specials in-person class. They are all going to be done virtually at the end of the day. So those special blocks that are on the student schedule will drop out for the in-person kids, and that work will be completed for them at the end of the day. Depending on what special the student has, the teacher of that special will release a video or an assignment or a project-based learning activity for that particular section and grade level. So those will happen about twice a week because a student, for example, would have maybe art Monday and then art again on Wednesday, and then would have gym on Tuesday and gym again on Thursday. So those will come about twice a week. And we're scheduling time in the student schedule that's going to be dedicated to that asynchronous work, that work that doesn't have to be tied to a specific teacher at a specific time, logging in, etc. So that asynchronous work can be done at any time. So that we're dedicating that afternoon period to that asynchronous work, the work in specials, the core areas, homework, independent work, things like that. So after this recess period, here, the afternoon, 12:40 on, will be dedicated to that asynchronous work for students in 5th grade in the in-person schedule. Now we'll go over and look at the all-virtual schedule. All right, so for 5th grade, we are taking that group of all virtual students. These are students that are not coming into the school at all. So they'll get all of their instruction remotely, online, on virtually. So we're taking those that big group and dividing it into 2 smaller groups. Mrs. Vasallo will take care of the instruction for math, science, and social studies for those kids. So in this example right here, we'll have 2 groups for math, 2 groups for science, 2 groups for social studies. So for example, in this particular schedule, 8:30 is going to be math group 1, 9:30 is going to be math group 2, 10:30 would be science group 1, 11:30 would be science group 2. And then on day 2, the science and social studies would flip-flop because they're alternating days. So that will take care of the math, science, and social studies requirement for all virtual kids. These will be live, online, synchronous classes, meaning the student has a scheduled time that they need to log on to have a live class with Mrs. Vasallo during that period. And these are the times right here. And the teachers will also communicate these times with you as well. So you're looking at about an hour block, and in that hour block, probably 40-minute class with 20 minutes of if they have questions or something at the end of that. Because we don't want kids to be tied to a computer screen for 4 straight hours. So in this case, the group 1 would get math at 8:30, then they would have a block off where they could work on their asynchronous work, and then they will have their science at 10:30. So in the afternoon, That group of students, all virtual students, will then be split 5 ways, and they will be assigned to one particular 5th grade teacher who will handle all of their language arts instruction. And that will occur in these 3 periods here, block F, G, H, at the end of the day, starting at 1:15 to 2:40. So you're looking at about an 85-minute block where that teacher will be assigned a small group somewhere between 6 to 8 kids. And those teachers will own those kids in terms of their little family for language arts instruction, and the teachers will give more details about exactly what the requirements are for that class. This does not necessarily mean that the kid's going to have to be glued to a computer screen for 85 hours. It's just saying that one teacher is going to be responsible for those 6 to 8 kids and their language arts requirement in that block. So it could be that they're meeting with 3 or 4 kids for 30 minutes, and then those kids go work on assignment while they meet with the other 3 or 4 kids. But when we get into this, those language arts teachers will give you all the details you need for when to log on and what the assignment is. But again, this is going to be a synchronous class, a live class. A kid in the all virtual program in 5th grade each day will be getting a live instruction online with a live teacher in math, science, or social studies, depending on which day it is, and then in their language arts as well. So I know that's what parents want, that's what the teachers want, and we'll start off with that. There's lots of different ways that we can enhance that, but that's the way that we'll start it off. And now I'll show you some examples of what a student schedule would look like in 5th grade. So for example, this is a 5th grade in-person schedule. Now in all of middle school, we are not doing day 3, day 4. So you can completely ignore those days when you see it on the schedule, which is why we have it all blued out over here. So the only days in Atlees from 5 to 8 that we're worried about are going to be days 1 and 2. Okay, in grades 6 to 8, we're going to have an all remote day, which I'll go over later. But in terms of the rotation, we're only worrying about days 1 and 2. So in this particular student schedule, it tells them what whether he has social studies or science on a particular day. It tells them what his special is. So in this case, day 1, this person has music. On day 2, this person has PE. And then you'll see that the block E is reserved for recess at home and lunch. And then these afternoon blocks for these in-person kids are going to be dedicated to time for asynchronous work. So that's work in their specials, their core areas, homework, reading, things like that. All right, and then we'll move on to a all virtual schedule in 5th grade. Again, this is a good example of how I try to make the schedule look as pretty as I could, but there are going to be blanks just because that's unavoidable in trying to operate 3 different master schedules within one student information system. So in this case right here, this would be a student, and it tells you in their cap block what their special is. So the student has art day 1, and then they have PE day 2. And this particular student is in group 1. So you see this M1 and S1. All right, so on day 1, they would have math. Then they would have a block off for their asynchronous work. Then they would have science. And then on day 2, they would have math, the block off, and then social studies. So in the afternoon, you'll see that period E, they have that recess at home. And then they will have their language arts block, which takes place that whole afternoon period. In addition to that, okay, and I also reference it up here, for the all virtual kids, this afternoon right here, Mrs. Vasello will be available to provide support or clarification or small group instruction or whatever support the student might need in the areas of math, science, and social studies. And that is going to be reflected on their schedules as well. And if you can see that little block right here, virtual support in 5th grade math, science, and social studies, Vasello. All right. So a 5th grader in the all virtual is going to get 5 days of synchronous instruction in math, science, and social studies at a regular time during the school day, and then they will get 5 days of synchronous instruction in the areas of language arts in the afternoon. And in addition to that, there's also the ability to get support in the afternoon from Mrs. Vasello in the areas of science, math, and social studies. And also they have their language arts block at the afternoon as well. Okay, so now I want to go into the 6th through 8th hybrid kids. So these are the kids who are going to be put into cohorts and will have their instruction in that hybrid model. Now, I was able to, through some crafty scheduling, work it so that we can remove a lot of the hybrid remote learning aspect of it. So the only students from grades 6 to 8 in the hybrid in-person model who are actually going to be working on a true hybrid model with that remote learning piece, 2 days on, 2 days remote learning, will be students in the high ability cohort. Those are the only students that will have to worry about that. For the other students, all the other students in grades 6 to 8 who are choosing the hybrid in-person model, they will get 5 days of live synchronous instruction. 2 of those days will be in person when they come to school, and 3 of those days will be live online instruction with your teacher. Okay, so I'll go over this schedule right here in 6th grade. So for example, if we're looking at the person in the Monday, Tuesday cohort, on Monday, Tuesday, they will come for in-person instruction. So there'll be 3 blocks. Normally we have 4 blocks. One of those blocks is their specials. Okay, so those specials are going to drop out, and I'll show you an example how to read that when we look at a student schedule in a little bit. So that student's going to have math, language arts, science, some combination of those 3 subjects or social studies in those 3 blocks. Okay, and when they look at the schedule, they'll know whether they have social studies or science on a particular day. And again, and when we look at the student schedule, you'll see the specials will drop out of the in-person instruction. So when you see that on a schedule, just know that that is not existing in the in-person instruction. So whatever class is below that bumps up a spot. And again, I'll show you that in a minute. So Monday, Tuesday, they would go through these classes right here. They would have 3 blocks of in-person instruction. Okay, the school days for 6th to 8th grade starts at 7:45. We will stagger the passing time so that both 7th and 8th grade aren't passing at the same time. And then we get into, in this case, a Monday, Tuesday cohort, Wednesday, Thursday, what I'm calling a remote learning days. So in this case, these non-high ability kids, so if they had, let's say it's a math class, they had it starting at 7:59, on Wednesday and Thursday, they will still have that same math class starting at 7:59 on both of these days. All right. So the class instruction, the live class, online class instruction for Wednesday and Thursday mirrors what they had on Monday and Tuesday. The only difference is they're going to be home getting it. So that teacher will be able to log on, Google Meet, start a live class with those kids. That teacher will not have any other students in a room at that time, so they will be dedicated to just those hybrid kids on those 2 days. So if I'm a Monday, Tuesday kid, and let's say I had math block A here on day 1, I now have math block block A on day 2. I'm still having on Wednesday and Thursday when I'm home, I'm still having math block A on both Wednesday and Thursday. Friday schedule, I will also have a live online class, but basically on Friday, we're putting, instead of having just 4 periods in a day, we're putting 8 periods in a day. And I'll show you that in a second. And then once the school day ends at 11:45, those students will go home. They'll have recess and lunch at home. And then what we're doing is we are having 2 blocks, two periods in the afternoon, 2 of those blocks in the afternoon. One is going to be dedicated to the hybrid group and all virtual group support for math and science. The other period is going to be dedicated to hybrid group support and all virtual group support in the areas of language arts and social studies. So what does support mean? Support could be a time for them to engage with a teacher one-on-one if they had questions or don't understand something. It's time for the teacher to be able to answer questions as the kids are submitting them through the day. So these 2 periods right here would be to support students who are at home in the hybrid environment. And then the last block of the day will be time dedicated to their specials and that what we call that asynchronous work, which is work that is not tied to a teacher and to a specific time of day. So they can complete this asynchronous work at any time. So now when we look at Friday, here we're taking all of our periods, okay, and we're putting them in that 4-hour window of school. So what happens is it basically comes into 8 half-hour periods. Now, some of our periods, math and language arts, are double periods. So for example, in this student sample schedule, this hybrid kid right here, okay, has a synchronous live class in math at 8 o'clock. They also have it 8:30. So this particular teacher will inform these kids that this is going to be, we don't want kids tied to a computer screen for 4 straight hours. So we want to be able to allow them to disconnect from the computer. So in this case, when you have a double block like this, that teacher will make that a 40-minute class and allow 20 minutes for questions and answers at the end. Or if the student just understands it, they can just disconnect for that 20 minutes so that they can come back on. So again, this next block C and D right here, that's another double period block. So that teacher would have a 40-minute class with 20 minutes left for instruction at the end. And then let's say block E here, the student has science. So that would be a 20, 30-minute science class. And then they would have social studies. okay, block F in this example. And then I'm also leaving in the specials blocks on this Friday schedule so that students have time built into their day to be able to work on that asynchronous learning. That, if the teacher in the specials assigns a project or something, or the student needs to ask the teacher questions, that can be done during this time. All right, so those are the hours from 8 to 12:30, from 8 to 12, that's 4 hours. Okay, so that's our Friday schedule. And then just like we did on Monday through Thursday, we're still having 4 blocks in the afternoon. The first block is dedicated to recess and lunch at home for the kids. And then just like we did Monday through Thursday, we are going to have 2 periods on Friday that are going to be dedicated to support in the all virtual kids and the hybrid kids. First in math and science from 12:40 to 1:20. And then in the that third period there will be 1:20 to 2 o'clock. Will be dedicated to supporting those hybrid and all virtual kids in the areas of language arts and social studies. And then the end block of Friday would be dedicated to that asynchronous work, okay? So this schedule right here would be the same. This happens to be 6th grade master schedule, but it would be the same for 6th, 7th, and 8th if you are in the in-person hybrid model for 6th through 8th grade. You would get your 3 core areas. Your specials would drop out of your schedule. You would do that in the afternoon. You would then have your recess block at home when the school day is over, and then you will have 2 support blocks for math and science, and then 1 for language arts and social studies, and then you will have a period at the end of the day dedicated for your asynchronous work. And again, that's 6th through 8th grade. So now we'll look at the 6th through 8th grade. I didn't talk about this all virtual schedule right here, but I'm going to come back to that after I do this. So in 6th to 8th grade, what's going to happen is the students in the all virtual 6th through 8th grade will each day get a live lesson in math, language arts, and then science or social studies, depending on which day of the rotation it is. So in this particular case, Monday through Thursday, this is the way that their instruction will go. Okay, this is a sample student schedule for 6th grade. So block A in 6th grade, that particular student will be able to get his math class. Okay, so the way that this works is in 6th or 8th grade, for math and for language arts, we split all of the all virtual kids into 3 groups. So there's a M1, M2, and an M3, and there's an E1, an E2, and an E3 for the ELA classes. And then we split science and social studies into 2 groups. So that's what this M2 and this SS1 is social studies 1, S1 is science 1. And then when you get down here, you'll see the E1, E2, E3. So I can only teach classes to the all virtual kids in 6th to 8th grade when I have a certified teacher that's available to do it. Most of that instruction happens in the afternoon, but I do have a couple periods during the day in grades 6th, 7th, and 8th where I'm able to teach that all virtual instruction during the course of the morning, that 8 to 12 range. So in this particular case, I could teach math class for 6th grade, first block for that M2. Now, what does M1, M2, M3 mean? An M1 class is just a regular class. It's not high ability. It's not the inclusion section. An M2 class would be the ICR section, that in-class resource section. So students might have an IEP but need that in-class resource teacher with them in that class. And then the M3 and E3 is dedicated to the high ability class. So important to note in grades 6 through 8, and really even included 5th, the teacher who's teaching this M2 ICR section up here is the same ICR teacher that the special ed student would have if they were in the in-person instruction model. So for example, in 6th grade, that would be Mrs. McGowan. So she would be providing that math in 6th grade in that ICR section to the all virtual kids, just like she would if the student was in person during the school day. She would be the teacher of that class along with with the other math teacher. The other thing too that's important to note is when we get down to this M3 here and this E3 here, these high ability math and language arts sections, the person who's teaching that math and language arts high ability section is the same high ability teacher that's doing the in-person instruction. So for example, this E3 high ability all virtual section is being taught by Mrs. Roberts. She is the same person who teaches the high ability in-person section. And this math right here, this high ability math section, is being taught by Miss Hewitt, who is also doing the in-person high ability instruction. So there wouldn't be any trade-off or negative in terms of if you're all virtual or if you're in person, in terms of whether you're getting that ICR teacher support or whether you're getting that same high ability instructor for the math and the language arts. So when we look at the afternoon, okay, so we have our block A again, which is going to be that recess at home and lunch period. We then have our period F and our block G and our block H in the afternoon. Our block F is always going to be dedicated to language arts instruction for the all virtual kids. So at this time of day, all of our certified language arts teachers are done teaching the in-person instruction, so they are able to teach the all virtual students at this time. And also dedicated to hybrid group and all virtual group support in the areas of math and science. Then the block G is dedicated to all virtual instruction in math and hybrid group and all virtual group support in language arts and social studies. That way the instruction and the support are not conflicting with each other. So a teacher who's teaching math during this block G is able to give the support in block F because they are not instructing in math at that point. All right, so we'll have staff dedicated to be able to provide support during those times for those specific subjects. And then the last block H here, PMH, is going to be dedicated to instruction in science and social studies. Now, if you were in the SS1 group up here, block B, and were able to get your instruction at about 9:30-ish time period, then you wouldn't be getting the instruction down here. You would just be in one of those two science and social studies groups. Okay, and again, I'll show you a schedule, student schedule, so you can see what that looks like in a minute. Okay, 7th grade all virtual is the same thing, and so is 8th grade. The only difference is going to be which periods I'm able to teach one of those math classes during the day and those science and social studies during the day. So for example, in 6th grade, I'm able to teach that M2 ICR section in block A, but in 7th grade, I can only teach that ICR section in block C. 8th grade, same thing. They're going to have some instruction during the day, and they would have some instruction in the afternoon. Okay, it's possible that they would have all of their instruction in the afternoon. So for example, you might be a high ability kid that has to get their E3 section and their M3 section in the afternoon, and it might be that your schedule has you in the S2 section and the SS2 section for your science and social studies shoot. You would have all of your instruction in the afternoon. That is a possibility. And then during the day is when you would work on your asynchronous work, your specials, and things like that. All right, so I just want to look at, in this case, it's a sample student schedule. This is a real schedule, not a made up one, but it's a real student schedule. In this particular case, this student in 6th grade is in the high ability section. So their class on day 1 and 2 for the in-person model. Okay, so these are people that are coming to school every day. They're going to have math, language arts, and then you see social studies on day 1, and then science, they're going to have, or day 2, they're going to have math, language arts, and science. So this high ability kid in 6th grade will get 2 days of live instruction. Then in this case, let's say it's a Monday, Tuesday cohort. Then on Wednesday, Thursday, they will be home for remote learning. The high ability kids, when they are home for remote learning, will either be doing a flipped classroom, some sort of extension activity, project-based learning. It could be a recorded lesson that the teacher is teaching that day so that they're getting the same material. So there's a couple ways that we can handle that. And then on their Friday schedule, you'll see that all of their courses are listed here for their blocks. Okay, so just like when I showed you this picture here, okay, this picture right here where it has all 8 of their classes, that's this schedule right here. So there are 8 classes, so you're going to have 2 double period math, 2 double period language arts, you have a science, a social studies, and then you have your 2 specials. All right, and that's all here. And then you'll see that in some of these blocks are dedicated to support for math or science, or support for language arts, and then the other ones are dedicated to asynchronous work. So this, and this would be the same for 6th through 8th grade high ability. You're going to get 2 days of in-person instruction, 2 days remote learning, and then you're going to also get a 3rd day of synchronous instruction on Friday in this schedule right here. All right, and your teachers will communicate that to your kids as well through the Google Classroom, so they know exactly when to log on. And again, just, I put X's here just to remind you that the specials are not occurring in lunch or the lunch or specials. So you know that they won't be occurring in the in-person instruction. So now we have a 6 to 8 non-high ability hybrid kid. So in this case, okay, day 1, the student has science, math, language arts. Day 2, social studies, math, language arts. And again, lunch and the specials are crossed out because we won't have those. So that let's say this was a Monday, Tuesday cohort person. So this would be their schedule: day 1 on Monday, day 2 on Tuesday, and then day 3, okay, would be Wednesday, and day 4 would be Thursday. They would follow this same thing. So if they had science at 8 o'clock in the morning on day 1, and social studies at 8 o'clock in the morning on day 2, then when they get to day 3 and 4, okay, which is, again, we're just following the day 1 and 2 schedule. So when they get to Wednesday and Thursday, they're still logging in for their 8 o'clock science class on Wednesday and their 8 o'clock social studies class on Thursday. And then on the remote learning day on Friday, they have all of their classes, okay, including their specials, which will allow time for them to be able to work on that asynchronous work, okay, which is right there. Okay, so now we look at a 6th to 8th grade all virtual schedule. So this is a sample student schedule. So this is what it's going to look like. And again, this is where I'm talking about. I tried to make it as pretty as I could, but I can't fill in some of these blocks. The system just won't allow it. So any blocks that are empty are dedicated to the asynchronous work, working on specials, homework, anything engaged in those learning activities for your various classes. You could be asking a question to a teacher. Something like that. So if we look at this particular schedule, in this example, the student has all of their classes in the afternoon. So PM F, G, and H. They have language arts, math, and social studies. Then on day 2, they have language arts, math, and science. So that schedule would be right here. So they're getting their afternoon instruction in this model right there. Okay, but this is what it would look like on a student schedule. And just to go back to that remote learning Friday for the all virtual kids, if you look at this schedule that I showed earlier, now I want to look at this column right here for the all virtual group. So these students on the all virtual group would be working on an asynchronous assignment. It could be a recorded lesson, it could be a flipped classroom, project-based learning, something along those lines during that 8 to 12 window, and then they would get their support periods down here in the afternoon. So this all virtual kids are going to get 4 days of live synchronous instruction. They will log on. They will have a live teacher 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday, at their synchronous time, the same time every day. Then on Friday, they will have their remote learning day. So for the all virtual kids, you would have flipped classroom, extension activity, project-based learning, a recorded lesson, something like that. And then you will have 5 days of support in the afternoon for math, science, and then social studies and language arts. Now, why on Friday am I giving the in-person kids the instruction on Friday? And the reason is to try and balance out the time of the synchronous instruction that the all virtual kids are getting versus the hybrid kids. If I'm a high ability kid, for example, I'm getting 2 days of live classes, Monday and Tuesday, and then I'm not getting anything until Friday again. So if I'm an all virtual high ability kid, I'm getting 4 straight days of live synchronous instruction. So in order to balance it out so that the all virtual kids and the in-person kids are getting similar amounts of time in terms of the direct instruction, online instruction, I'm dedicating the Friday morning instruction periods to the in-person kids so that we can balance that out with what the virtual kids are getting. Now, here's an example of 7th and 8th grade. With 6th grade, when you look at the in-person schedule, it's actually pretty easy for them because their specials occur at the last block. So their schedule is accurate. Math, language arts, social studies, math, language arts, science. They don't have to worry about bumping up blocks. But when you look at a 7th grade schedule, they have their specials first period. So you just have to know that period right there, that health period, is not occurring. So their first class of the day is going to be science. So this block would bump up here, then language arts bumps up here, and then math bumps up here. So they're going to go science, language arts, math on day 1, social studies, language arts, and math on day 2. Then when you look at 8th grade, their specials occur during that B block. So you just have to know when you look at that schedule for the in-person instruction kids that those classes are not occurring. So whatever happens after that moves into its spot. All right. And so therefore, in this case, the person's going to have math, then they're going to have science in this block, and then this language arts is going to move up into there. And they will have, so on day 1, they'll have math, science, language arts. Day 2, they have math, social studies, language arts. One thing I didn't cover yet that I want to address now is what schedule do we follow if we get shut down? If the government says, we got to close all schools, or, the health department says we have to close for a period of time. And the schedule that we follow is the same schedule that we would follow any day of the week, right? So if I'm a Monday, Tuesday cohort person, I'm following my regular Monday, Tuesday cohort schedule. The only difference would be we would not have to hybrid the high ability kids because we would be logging on to a live Google Classroom at that point. So we could have 20, 25 kids in that section because it's a remote section. It's a live online class. They're not actually together in a room. So that's the only difference that would happen if we ended up shutting down and having to go all remote for one reason or another from the governor or from the health department or something like that. Everybody would just follow the schedule that I just explained. And it would just be a normal day. All virtual kids, it would be really nothing new for them because they're already getting their instruction remotely through online lessons as it is. And for the 6 to 8 hybrid kids, it would be the same thing for you guys. And again, just the high ability kids would all be able to log on at the same time because there no longer would be a need to social distance since it's a live online class and we aren't actually in the room together. All right, hopefully after that video I didn't confuse you more, but you might have a better appreciation for the complexities that go into trying to create 3 different master schedules within the student information system. So as you can see, we tried to make it each of the schedules as pretty as we could in terms of what you're looking at on a piece of paper, but there are some limitations to what we're able to do. Just know that if there's any blanks on any schedule, that is time dedicated to the asynchronous work, working on specials, that type of stuff. We are looking to release our schedules on the portal in the next day or so. So you'll get an announcement through social media on when that happens. And if you have questions about a schedule, feel free to call 609-641-5375, and my direct extension is 1019. And I'll try to clarify or solve any confusion that you might have. All right. Other than that, have a great day and enjoy the rest of your summer.